To the Kingdom Operator Podcast. I'm Brian Monroe. I spend my days helping founders, executives, and private equity-backed organizations bring structure, clarity, and order to complex businesses. Companies that are growing, stuck, or struggling and looking for a better way. I'm a Christian and a man of deep faith and consider God the head of my organization and household. But this podcast isn't just about better systems. It's about something deeper. Here we talk about what it means to run a business as a steward. Each week, we'll dig into operational challenges, system failures, workflow issues, team dysfunctions, and a variety of other stresses we have in business. This is a place for serious leaders who are ready to lead with clarity, order, and faith and build businesses that truly honor God. Welcome to the Kingdom Operator Podcast. Let's get started. Welcome back to the Kingdom Operator Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Monroe. In the first episode, we talked about how we often confuse ownership with stewardship in our businesses. And we focus a lot on that. And we started to bring up the topic of chaos and clarity while we're discussing that. And so I said that when we get into episode number 2, we're going to talk about chaos versus clarity in this particular episode with our businesses. So episode 2, here we go, chaos and clarity, why disorder is revealing and clarity is a leadership calling. So in our businesses, chaos usually doesn't just kind of creep in and announce itself and say, hey, I am here. It kind of shows up a little bit at a time. It doesn't, show up in our business with an immediate, what we want to call a dumpster fire or alarms or red lights flashing. It kind of settles in quietly. And that's the thing about chaos is it settles into our businesses quietly. A little rushed decision here, a little delayed conversation there, some procrastination, maybe another meeting that could have just been an email. But over time, chaos starts to feel like a problem. You're getting your busy days, your calendar is getting jammed up full of all kinds of things. There's like this endless motion that's going on. And as a result of that, you're not feeling a lot of peace in your business. There's not a lot of things getting completed, or that sense of completeness is not really there. In fact, it's a sense of complexity, and there's very little clarity that's going to happen in the business. So if your business feels loud, but direction kind of feels quiet, this episode is exactly for you, and this is what you're going to need to hear today, because this is what we're going to be talking about is chaos and clarity. So let's just jump right into it here. So chaos is rarely the root cause. It's rarely a root cause in your business. Chaos, I like to say, is the evidence that something deeper is actually happening in your business. So chaos isn't really the root cause, it's the evidence, or you'll hear me speak a lot about it's a sign or a symptom. Again, I think I mentioned it on the first one, but signs and symptoms, root cause, best way to explain this is I wake up one morning, I've got a headache, I've got a fever, I'm stuffed up, I've clearly got something going on, and the sign or the symptom is the headache, is the fever, is the stuffiness. It's not the root cause of what's actually going on with me. So chaos is exactly the same thing. It's kind of like a flag or symptom, and it's not the root cause. So let's take a look at what the Bible has to say in 1 Corinthians 14, verse 33. But God is not a God of disorder, but a God of peace. Look at that. Not a God of disorder, but a God of peace. And this is when we start talking about the whole chaos, disorder, moving to clarity, which a lot of times gives us peace. So clarity usually points to one or more leadership, clarity points our direction in leadership, but then chaos, what it does is it points to a lot of deficiencies in leadership or gaps. So if chaos is pointing, chaos is pointing to leadership gaps, what could some of these be? Well, the first one could be unclear priorities. So unclear priorities in your business. Or 2, we could be looking at defined ownership. And this goes right back to episode 1 when we talked about ownership versus stewardship. Okay, ultimately our businesses are what God has given us and entrusted us to manage as stewards. Ultimately, He owns it. And if we have undefined ownership and things like that, that's when a lot of the chaos is creeping in, especially in our leadership. So the third point is competing vision. Fourth would be any kind of delay of decisions. We see that quite a bit. So chaos is going to delay your decisions. You're not going to feel like you got a really good handle on making a sharp, clear decision right away. So chaos is going to drive that. And the fifth one is ultimately chaos causes a fear of any kind of conflict. So a fear of conflict in our business, chaos is going to drive that. So if your organization is telling you that there's something foundationally missing or something foundationally wrong, and it's you're competing visions, you've got decisions that are being delayed, you've got fear of conflict, priorities are all over the place, then chaos is definitely alive and well in your business right now. And it's going to be your goal to take a look and see, well, what is it that it's trying to tell us? What's the message am I trying to get because of the chaos of my business? And then how can I possibly correct that and start to turn it around? So it leads us into another really good question that I think we need to tackle as leaders. And this is why do we tolerate the chaos in the first place? Why would we even bother saying, hey, I'm going to tolerate it, I'm going to allow it to live and breathe in my business? Why do we tolerate it in the first place? Well, because remember at the beginning I said that chaos kind of creeps in. It's like that old story of, you take a frog and put a frog in a pot of boiling water, it jumps out immediately. It's like, ooh, that's really hot, and jumps out immediately. But you take a frog and you put it in a pot of just kind of room temperature water and then slowly turn up the heat, it will not jump out and it'll basically boil to death, So this is what chaos does to us. It kind of creeps in and eventually gets up to a boiling point in our business where everything just feels like it's out of control. But why does we actually tolerate it? Well, first of all, chaos allows us to feel like the urgency feels productive. We tolerate it because urgency feels productive. Second of all, we also say that, as a result of that, firefighting seems like it's necessary. So if urgency makes us feel productive, firefighting then naturally feels like it's necessary. Okay? And then the third thing is the fact that us being needed amongst all of this chaos, amongst all of this, crazy, it feels to us very validating. Oh, I'm absolutely needed. I feel validated in that. Okay? And this is the thing about chaos. Chaos, let's put it down here. Chaos actually requires nothing. It's just there, and it can operate, and it can fester, and it can grow in your business. Chaos requires nothing. Clarity, on the other hand, requires courage, requires change. Clarity forces decisions. Clarity forces ownership. Clarity exposes any kind of misalignment. And that's why a lot of times leaders get set and get comfortable in the chaos of their day-to-day operations, and they don't necessarily want to get into the mission of how do I get rid of this and how do I get more clear in my business? How do I get the clarity? Okay? So clarity is not a personality in our business. It's not a culture. It's actually a responsibility that we have in our business. Some leaders think that clarity is a communication skill. Well, it's not. Clarity is a moral responsibility of leadership in our companies. So let's take a look at Proverbs 29:18 and check out this verse here. Where there is no revelation, people cast off restraint, but blessed is the one who heeds wisdom's instruction. Vision here does not mean necessarily ideas. It means direction. It means that it's being seen and it's being understood. It's clear to us. People do not fail because they lack effort. They fail often because they have no clarity. They're not really sure, well, should I be going left or should I be going right? Okay, so you need to talk to your team. You need to ask your team a few questions here. You need to go back to the team and say, have I actually made for you all a targeted plan? Because that would be a really good way of me showing clarity to my team. Have I defined what success looks like? Have I told you what I expect? Have I said, this is what good is going to look like. This is what success is going to look like. And have I actually clarified all of our priorities? Have I clarified our priorities, or am I just assuming? Have I clarified the priorities, or am I just assuming that we're on the same page? Am I just assuming that we're aligned? Am I just assuming that you know what needs to be done? Okay? Leadership does not mean being the smartest person in the room by any means. Leadership means basically making the direction unmistakable, clearly defined direction. So clarity requires definition, requires direction, more so than even in communication. It's like the clarity requires the direction and the definition. More meetings do not fix chaos. More emails don't fix chaos either. More, talking and that doesn't fix chaos either. The definition fixes chaos. The definition of where we're going, what we're doing, what does success look like? What is my expectations of you going forward? So looking at Habakkuk 2:2, then the Lord replied, write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. Look at that. Write it down, make it plain on tablets. Now, they're talking about stone tablets as opposed to iPads, but it's kind of cool that they use the word tablets. Make it plain, write it down, make it plain on them, so that herald, or basically so anybody knows exactly what you want and they can run with it. So in our business, this equates to a lot of times to standard operating procedures. We create SOPs so that we can write things down and make it super clear so that I can hand that SOP to somebody else and say, I need you to run this play. I need you to go through and follow these instructions and see if you can, get the same outcome as I do. Okay, we do SOPs all the time. We're working with all of our clients, creating SOPs for them and helping them, get in that mindset of doing that. And all we're doing is basically kind of putting together a vision for them so that they can write things down in clear, plain language that anybody can pick it up and run with it. Okay? So the instruction was, the instruction given here was, we're not going to explain things better. We're not going to, explain it again and again and again. The instruction was make it plain, make it clear. Okay? Clarity answers questions before they become problems. Clarity says, well, who owns this? Clarity says, what matters right now most? Clarity says, what does done actually look like? I love that one. When is done done? People are like, well, what do you mean? Well, when is done done? A lot of times that we create in our businesses, we create standard operating procedures, we create statements of work, we put in requirements, we put in objectives, all of that kind of stuff, but we fail to actually document when is this actually done. Because if 3 or 4 or 5 or 10 people can look at the results of something and they can't tell that it's done, then you're failing. You're missing the mark here. Okay? Clarity answers, What are we saying no to in our business? What are we not going to do now so that we can remain clear and we don't let chaos take over? All right, so some things that you want to remember in your business, kind of some practical tips here as the business owners, is I want to ask you a couple of diagnostic type questions. So in your business right now, where is, besides where is chaos showing up, where is chaos repeating? In other words, where is it showing up over and over and over again? Okay. What decisions have you delayed lately? Or worse, what decisions do you keep delaying? Which ones do you keep putting off? Where does procrastination start to shove in there and push out those decisions that actually need to be made? Okay? Here's another really interesting one. On a daily basis, or maybe a weekly basis, but what are you tolerating? What are you tolerating in your business, but privately resenting it? What are you tolerating in business, but then when you're on your own, you're like, why am I tolerating that? Why do I let that happen? It keeps happening. What are you tolerating that you're secretly and privately resenting? And then ultimately, we all need to look at every aspect of business and is what is unclear? What is unclear and needs clarity? What are the areas in your business that are unclear that clarity could be injected into? What are the areas in the business that, ultimately, if you were asked a question of 4 different people, you get 4 different answers instead of the one you're looking for? Well, that's a good sign that you need some interjection in there, some clarity added in there. Okay. So chaos will keep returning time and time again in your business if you let it. Chaos will keep returning to the same places in your business if you let it. Remember that if you fix chaos over in one part of your business, it could still be running rampant in another part of your business. But ultimately, like I said at the beginning of this talk, chaos is that sign and that symptom that there's probably something deeper that you might want to be investigating and taking a look at. There could be as something as simple as, we're chaotic over here because we've never put an SOP together. So how about we just spend a bit of time, process map this, write out the SOP, test it with 3 or 4 or 5 different people, and see if the chaos disappears and is replaced with clarity. A lot of times that's the easiest thing that you could possibly do. Okay, and then finally, if we look at the last bit of scripture, Genesis 1:2, like right at the very beginning of the Bible, and the earth was formless and empty, darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. God brings order before manipulation. So before Adam was there naming animals and stuff like that, he brought everything together in an order. Before creation expanded, it was ordered in an orderly fashion. So before your businesses can scale, they must be clarified. They must be put in order. And that's a lot of the work that I end up doing with these organizations I work with. I'm just helping them get order, get structure, push chaos out, bring clarity in, systematize, get new processes, work on antiquated workflows, all of the stuff that creates a chaotic environment. All we're looking to do is get order in place. And order brings the clarity. So before growth is sustainable, leadership must be decisive. And in order to be decisive and make solid, good decisions in your business, you need great data coming to you. And you can't get great data from this whirlwind of chaos. So chaos, though, is not the enemy. It's an invitation for you to get into your business and make some changes to replace it with clarity. So I like this conversation because there's oftentimes I have to look in my own business and say, why did this week feel a little chaotic? And then I'll go back and I'll take a look and see where I need to reevaluate and re-up for the next week or the next month and do something better. So I appreciate you joining me again for another episode. As always, please, in YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And then I want to hear from you. I want to, tell me what you think of these episodes. If you've been following me since the first one, you're going to see that I actually changed the camera angles a little bit, hoping that you can see the board better. So that was some feedback that I got, and I thought that was really awesome that one of my friends was able to give me that level of feedback. But I want to hear from you. I want to know, what is your operational challenges? What are you struggling with right now? And it could be in operations, it could be workflow, automations. As I mentioned, we're going to be talking about AI as well. What is an AI challenge that you have? I want to hear the stories. I love to hear the stories, because chances are if you've got the challenge, 100 other people have it as well. So take care, and I'll see you on the next episode.